Okay, so what is this madman actually doing out in the snow and out in the cold, holding up a phone camera? Well, today I want to talk about my YouTube video gear for 2019, the favorite stuff that I actually use on basically a daily basis. Usually on this channel I talk about 3D printing and making and projects and those sort of things, but by nature of using camera gear and equipment and filmmaking tools all day, I kind of became a gearhead. I'm kind of fascinated by the technology that we use to make these videos. Now, I'm going to be talking about all the gear I use on a regular basis today, but you know, one of the things you're going to be hearing the most if you look at the channels from other creators that talk about what gear they are using, they're going to make a point out of saying, hey, you can use just your phone. If you have any sort of halfway decent smartphone, you can just use that and get pretty much the same information and the same story across. And I thought about just shooting this entire episode on my phone as well, but I still want to go through step by step and show you what gear I use, but also what it does. So first of all, we're still on my phone. The phone is just taped to a tripod with some gaffer tape. So first tip, if you don't have any gaffer tape, this stuff is amazing. What you're gonna notice is that this looks kind of bland and dull and noisy and washed out, and that is because there's only a single light hitting me right up there. So what we can do is to add some lights. And this is probably looking totally blown out, so let me fix that real quick. There we go, much better. I'm filming this on the manual mode on my phone where I can set exposure and focus and white balance manually. Otherwise, the color temperature and all that is just gonna be bouncing around like crazy. So let me show you what I have for lights. And my point here is that you don't need anything particularly expensive. This is actually a 3D printed mount that has a pair of E27. If I turn the exposure way down, you can see what this looks like. Then there's an IKEA desk lamp over here that's like 10 bucks or so. And another one of these soft boxes up here. This one is optional. This is just for fill. So the next thing you're going to notice is that my voice doesn't actually sound as good as it usually does. It's going to be echoey because it's just the microphones on the phone picking me up. You're probably going to hear the dryer that's going one room over. It doesn't just pick up what's in front of the camera, it picks up everything else. So a few ways that you can solve this. You're probably going to have seen, you know, these Rode Video Mic Pros on, you know, the big vloggers channels. But, oh, this one is nice and fuzzy. But I'm actually super not happy with the Video Mic Pro. Instead, I like the Video Mic Go instead. This is way smaller, this is way cheaper, and they make a version that you can clip onto phones as well. It's the same microphone. And this thing just sounds so much better. Because I don't have the cable to plug it in my phone, I'm just gonna plug it into the camera real quick and have you hear the difference. So this is what the phone sounds like, and this is what my camera sounds like with the Video Mic Go on top at arm's length. If we go to the same distance, again, camera mic, and this is what the phone sounds like from the same perspective. So there is quite a big difference, but there is still a limitation with these on-camera microphones because they are still going to pick up anything that's behind you or anything that's close to you. So what I actually like to use instead are lavalier microphones. And these are just the small microphones that, you know, you clip to your collar. I usually have these somewhere here on my collar where you don't really see them. And because the distance between the microphone and where my voice comes out is so much smaller than from me to the camera, these things just usually give you so much clearer audio, and they actually make a version that plugs straight into a phone. So let me give you a comparison to this. And I'm just realizing that my phone's default camera app isn't letting me record from this external microphone, so here's a small sample clip of how that sounds like. You can always use third-party apps that give you more control over your camera and also, you know, do something like letting you record external audio from a separate mic. So that microphone is the Rode Smart Lav Plus, and it's still one of the pieces of gear that I got really early on in my YouTube career and still use so often. Whenever I just need a separate recorder, I can just plug this into my phone and instantly mic up a second person and get perfect audio every time. And what I really like about these Rode mics is that they're so small and inconspicuous. But what I actually use most of the time is this wireless Rode Filmmaker kit. It's got the same style of lavalier microphone, it's slightly larger, but this one goes into a transmitter and then has a receiver that sits on the camera and just plugs into your mic port on the camera. So with this, you can move around with a perfect mic setup. This is going to be really close to me and still have the camera completely independent from me. And that's what that looks and sounds like. So you've just got this small pack on you, and then on the camera there's the same style receiver as this, and it gives you super clear, crisp, close audio. So So of course, with the big boy microphone, you have to bring out the big boy camera to connect everything up. And as you can see, I'm using the Panasonic GH5. I've got two of them. Actually, I only need one, but I got a second one because I needed it to film an event. So yeah, sometimes you just accumulate more gear than you actually need. And the first thing you're gonna see is the flip out screen. That is my absolute favorite feature of this camera. I don't know how so many people can get by without one, or one that just flips up and then is halfway obscured. This is so useful because when you're filming yourself, when you're a one-man operation like I am, you can check what you're actually filming, what you're actually picking up. If it's just on the back, like, you have no way of checking. While filming with my phone a minute ago, I was using the back-facing camera, so I actually had the screen facing away from me. I had to set up the shot, kind of check where it was, record a bit, and it's just this back and forth that takes a lot of time, and having that flip-out screen is so super efficient because you can check what you're recording in real time. And that's kind of the theme of this entire video. Most of the gear is not necessarily, like I said, to give me like the absolute most best quality whatever I can get. No, it's because it really works well for me. So that's the reason why I use the Rode Filmmaker kit for audio, because it goes straight into the camera. You don't have to record into a separate recorder, maybe have that run out of battery or storage space and then sync up files in editing. No, it's just all in one clip. You have it in your editor straight away. You don't have to do anything to your clips to be able to edit them. And the same with the GH5 and with the Panasonic cameras in general. This is the G7 that I was recording on before. It's got the same flip out screen. It's a bit more compact. It doesn't do as many things as the GH5, but this would still be a really good camera if I didn't need just like one or two things that the GH5 does. Now, what I like about Panasonic cameras, and you know what kind of got me hooked, is, you know, of course that they have that super tiny sensor. This sensor is tiny compared to all the full frame cameras that are coming out today, but it's just so usable. Using this camera is just so fast and efficient. It might just be because I'm used to them, but I feel like everything is just super well laid out. You've got your SD card slots on the side, you've got your preset ring up here where you can switch from, you know, continuous autofocus to fixed focus to time-lapse mode with just a click, and it's all preset there. You can program these. It does do time lapses in camera, which a few cameras don't do. It just does all these things that I feel like make my life so much easier. And you know, with my style of YouTube content where I try to explain something or show a process or a project or review something, it's already so much more effort to make those videos, at least I feel that way, than just walking around with the camera, vlogging into it and talking about a subject. So I need my gear to be as efficient and as fast to work with as possible so that I don't spend time on the gear itself and instead can just pick it up, work with it, and know how everything is going to behave. So autofocus is going to be one of the big points of critiques that people are going to have with Panasonic cameras. But honestly, if you look at what results vloggers get with Canon cameras that are supposed to be fantastic with autofocus, I'm getting the same on the GH5 now, so it's not a big deal. And in fact, I record so much on just continuous autofocus now, you're probably not even noticing that it's focusing. Nevertheless, you can always do manual focus with a sitting down talking headshot like this. And one of the big topics with the small sensor is getting some sort of bokeh, some sort of background blur out of that tiny sensor. So if you're looking for that more cinematic, dreamy, artistic style, you're always going to be wanting lenses that have a big aperture. This is an f1.2. I used it a few times. My absolute favorite lens for this is the 25mm f1.7. This is like a €150 lens, and it's absolutely amazing. Highly recommended. I also use the two kind of standard Panasonic lenses, the 12-35 f2.8, just for my go-to lens whenever I'm vlogging something or don't have time to set up a shot. And then the 8-18, the super wide angle for anything that is on a show floor or on the go where I need that extra wide angle. So I've already kind of talked about lights real quick. And you know, one of the things you might be tempted to get are these LED panels, but honestly, I don't use them at all. I have these two. These were some of the earliest stuff I got. I rarely use them because they're, I don't know, they're big, they're bulky, they're too heavy to put on the camera. It just gets really unruly. And also they're still rather small. They don't give you that soft light like a big softbox. So they're still really harsh. And I don't know, just don't use them at all. What I do use is this super tiny LED light from Aperture. It's not particularly bright, but you can actually use it as a fill light and just as an on-camera light when you're recording somewhere where you don't have super consistent lighting conditions. And you can see how it puts out, you know, a decent amount of fill light. And it's just super small, super light. You can take it anywhere. Absolutely recommend it, 50 bucks. This has been a lifesaver so many times. And speaking of filming in environments where you've not got full control over stuff, you're often gonna see vloggers that film out and about on these Joby Gorilla Pods. And I have one too, I have a genuine one, and if I'd have a recommendation for you is to actually get the real deal, because the knockoffs are pretty useless. And this is one of those tools that's just not particularly good at anything because it tries to do everything. So I don't actually use this thing much in my sort of studio setup. The one use case I have for it is, of course, the Casey Neistat grip, and for that it does work pretty well. But in general, that is just something that is, you know, particular to the way that I shoot videos in sort of a studio environment and not out on the road. I would actually recommend getting a tripod first. Now, there are a lot of not particularly great tripods out there, but the one that I actually use the most is this Manfrotto compact action tripod. By the way, always keep some gaffer tape on your tripod. You never know when that's going to come in handy. So that's what I actually use all the time, because it has this pistol grip and it's just super easy to move your camera around, and that just makes my life, again, easier. It's not the best product out there, but it is the one that gets my work done the fastest. I also have this big heavy tripod with the Manfrotto fluid head, and this is nice if you want to get some, oh, it's squeaky because it's locked. This is nice to get some really smooth pans and tilts. The thing is, this is really slow to use, and it's kind of bulky and it's heavy, so I never take it outside the studio. And I basically only use it, you know, for B-roll when I've got a camera on here and just need to do a really smooth and silky shot. And for that, it's great. But again, very specialized tool, very heavy, very expensive. Get a sturdy, normal tripod first. And one thing that I can totally recommend is to get some sort of quick release plate system. I use the Arca Swiss system. They're just a regular 40mm plate you can put on cameras. I have these on every single tripod. I also use them for lights. You can see I have a small plate on here. This is 3D printed, and I can just plop this thing into that tripod, this tripod, the monopod over there. Anything that I can mount stuff to has that same plate. Anything that I can mount stuff to has that plate and those receivers on there. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's you know, just a really good fit for this size camera. And one tool that I almost forgot to talk about is the monopod. This thing is amazing to travel with because it stands up by itself. You can even put a camera on there and it's still going to stand up on its own, like that. It looks a bit janky, yeah, it bounces around, but you can use it for an interview setup. You just point it somewhere and it stays. You can also unlock the bottom, kind of use it as a slider almost if you want to do this. Very versatile tool in the right hands. This is my go-to travel equipment. But again, if you're getting started, get a tripod first. It's the most versatile tool you can get for filmmaking, I think. And if you want to take that smooth motion idea one step further, of course, you can start working with sliders. I built this one from scratch. So you can find the video up here somewhere. It's missing its platform right now. I'm doing some mods to this, but basically you can program like long time lapses and stuff, and it's motorized, so it's going to move the camera really slowly. This is probably way longer than anyone needs it, so I've also been playing with the Edelkrone sliders. I believe they're a company from the Czech Republic, and they make these neat little guys that have the slider and then a turntable head, and it does things like pretty darn cool if you ask me. These are rather expensive and I'm not sure if they're worth it, but you know, they're a tool in the arsenal if you want to get creative and if you want to do, you know, stuff that is kind of more automated and more robot-y, then this can be an option. And you may be wondering like, hey Tom, why aren't you 3D printing more of your gear? Why aren't you doing like 3D printed tripods and stuff or stuff like that? But the thing is, it is really hard to make gear to that quality and to that ease of use level than what you can buy off the shelf. But most of the gear that I use have some sort of 3D printed components on them. For example, this monopod has these leg extenders on it, so it actually stands up by itself and doesn't just topple over. By default, you only get these short feet. So that's 3D printed. Then adapter plates for tripod heads, 3D printed. Little camera adapter clips that fit into the Arca Swiss mounts and just clip onto my phone. This is the wrong size for my phone, but you get the idea. 3D printed. The majority of these sliders custom parts are also 3D printed. It's just that these large projects, most of them are slightly beyond the scope of being feasible to make with a 3D printer. So I feel it's a really good match to customize the parts you have and the parts that you can get off the shelf with 3D printed parts to make them work for you. And you know, that totally works for me. Many of the things that I'm 3D printing you can just not buy off the shelf, like adapters or combination plates that mix and match parts together that weren't meant to be together. That is what 3D printing is great for in film and video making here. And to finish this video out, I kind of want to touch on the stuff that I thought I would use way more, but kind of have given up on. And that is, I think, really important because we think we need all these things, but some of the stuff is so specialized that it just falls through. So I already touched on the LED panels. These just don't fit my style of work. One of the things that I really like but kind of have moved past are all manual lenses. These are Samyang lenses. In fact, I'm still shooting on a Samyang 12mm f2.0 right now. This is a 16mm f2.0. These are fantastic lenses, especially if you're on a budget and don't want to shell out for the expensive native glass on your system, whether that's a Canon, Nikon, Sony, or Panasonic system. You know, the all electronic lenses are really nice, but they're also really expensive. So to get you started, the Samyang lenses, they have an incredibly crisp image. You can get the primes for a few $100, usually a fraction of what the brand name original glass costs. I love these lenses. I just prefer working with the autofocus lenses from Panasonic in my case right now because, again, it's faster to use. But if you want amazing image quality on a budget, Samyang lenses, go for them. Another thing when it comes to audio is, any sort of shotgun mic. I used to have this thing mounted on the ceiling, but then moved to wireless lavalier mics because they are so much faster to work with and I can actually move around and don't have to stand right underneath the microphone. So this thing used to get a bit of use, but now it's just sitting on the shelf, as well as, the good old Zoom H4 audio recorder. This is something that a lot of people actually recommend. I hate it. I think it's amazing for what it does and how versatile it is, but it's just not well implemented. I mean, the audio quality isn't all that good. The usability through the screen is horrible. It's super slow. It's an audio recorder. Like, how hard can it be? And mine has developed that annoying bug where at the end of a recording, it will sometimes say card error, no matter what card you put in. And it's not reproducible. So sometimes it will just forget an entire recording session at the end of it, which is absolutely not acceptable. So this thing, not recommending it at all. Just get some other solution that records directly into the camera. The camera audio setups are so good right now that you don't really need anything external anymore. And lastly, probably one of the most hyped devices out there right now. Well, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but gimbals. I have one of these fancy DJI Osmo Plus, I believe this is. How does this work? Like that. Yeah, I've used it like twice. So this is a gimbal camera. It has a camera head on a gimbal, and it gets you like super stabilized footage. Does it even have a battery in here? It does. Let me see if I can find how to turn this on. Yeah, battery's dead. So this is a gimbal camera, and it gives you really smooth footage. But the problem is, first of all, gimbal footage always looks so awkward. It always looks, you're still moving around a lot like this, but it just stays super locked on a subject. So it just looks weird. And also the camera on this thing is garbage. The image quality isn't good. And also, I guess, but the main problem with this was that the app that you have to use with it to control the entire thing, because it basically, your phone mounts it on the side, it was never working reliably. So I had a case where I was on the show floor of a trade show once, tried to shoot something, and I fumbled around with the thing for 10 minutes and I couldn't get it to work because you have to connect to that thing's Wi-Fi with your phone, then you open up the app. Sometimes the app opens up to a black screen, sometimes it doesn't control it. It's just a mess. Sorry, guys. So that kind of ruined the DJI brand for me. I mean, the stuff is well made, but it's not well implemented, I think. So the gimbal, just not something that I see myself using. Maybe I'm gonna get one for a camera at some point, but the standalone gimbal camera, not going for it. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of the YouTube video gear that I'm starting 2019 with, and that I'm probably gonna be sticking with throughout the majority of 2019. You can find a continuously updated list of the gear that I use on tom3d.org/gear. That's also gonna be listed in the description below. And again, don't be discouraged by, some of these things literally costing like 1,200 euros to buy. You don't need all this stuff. This is just something that makes my life easier and makes it easier to achieve what I'm going for. But if you have the time to invest and if you really want to learn about filmmaking, then start on your phone, constrain yourself, maybe get a microphone, get one of these $50 clip-on mics, and you can create pretty amazing stuff with that. So as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're subscribed and haven't clicked that notification bell, please do. I think it even gives you option for what notifications you want to get, but that's what YouTube cares about. Just hitting subscribe doesn't really do it anymore, but I would still appreciate it if you're not subscribed yet. Click that button. That bumps up the subscribe counter by 1, which is fantastic. All right. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.